By the mid-1940s, Julian's work at Glidden had won him national acclaim. With the outbreak of World War II, his alpha protein became the chief ingredient in bean soup, a firefighting foam credited with saving thousands of servicemen's lives. He was even featured in Reader's Digest, one of America's most popular magazines.
It was the beginning of white America's exposure to Dr. Percy Julian, and how he had to fight to overcome the odds of being a black man in America. And in the context of the times, it made him a symbol.
Here was a person who looked like me, who was not only in the field, but succeeding magnificently at the top of his profession. That was profound.
Julian was named to the boards of half a dozen colleges and universities. He was showered with awards and honorary degrees and sought after as a public speaker. The NAACP awarded him its prestigious Spingarn Medal, previously given to W.E.B. Du Bois, George Washington Carver, Paul Robeson, and Thurgood Marshall. And the Chicago Sun-Times named him Chicagoan of the Year. As Julian's stature grew, so did his personal responsibilities. Anna had given birth to a son, Percy Jr., in 1940, and a daughter, Faith, 4 years later. With so many demands on Percy's time, Anna shouldered the parenting duties. For the children, she later wrote, an after-dinner visit with their father was a rare treat.
I hardly remember a weekend when he didn't work. But the time you had was quality time.
By the end of the 1940s, the family had outgrown their Maywood home. The Julians began looking for a bigger one in a neighborhood that suited their new social status. They set their sights on Oak Park, one of Chicago's most affluent and exclusive suburbs. The village was home to doctors, lawyers, and wealthy businessmen. It had a reputation as a town for the educated and enlightened.
It's always been a community that had a little sense of its importance as far as being perhaps a cut above others.
Thanks to our good friends, the makers of broadcast brand corned beef hash.
Oak Park even had its own radio show, familiar to listeners all over America as Breakfast with the Johnsons.
Daddy, I have to give a report in school, so I'm going to give it to you.
Well, these days, they call it reality radio. And that's what it was.
I haven't counted noses.
7:30 in the morning, Monday through Friday.
Pamela?
Hi.
The microphones were all over the house.
Daddy.
The children would wander in, and the milkman would come in.
They're doing imitations. I did Jimmy Durante. I wish I could have
We talked about us and the world around us.
Well, I'm glad to see you're learning how to make money.
The world around the Johnsons was cultured, privileged, and white. The few African Americans who lived in Oak Park worked as servants and laborers.
When the Julians came along, I'm sure that this was a shock to many people who lived in Oak Park. Here they are, two very well-educated people, both with PhDs. He, a very successful chemist and businessman, and they purchased a house, a large house on a large lot.
There was some nasty tongue-wagging going on. Who do these people think they are that they can move in here and take over our neighborhood?
Trouble began even before the Julians could move in.
My dad was out of town, and my mom got a call from the Oak Park Fire Department. Something has occurred at the house. This is the fire department. Could you please come? Even as a 10-year-old, I knew that this was an arson. There was no attempt to hide this, to make it look like an accident. I see these bottles these huge bottles, and I could smell gasoline. The stairs were soaked all the way up to the second floor. I think my mother was scared, but if she was, she didn't show it. They lit the fuse on the outside. The door caught on, but it sealed so well that the flames couldn't get under the door. And had the bottles caught, the flames would have gone right up the stairwell, natural chimney. And the house could have been a total loss. I looked at my mom and I said, why would anybody want to do this? And she explained it. They didn't want us to live there, and didn't want us to live there because of the color of our skin.
Now Percy Julian, accomplished, affluent, ambitious, was face to face with the same violence African Americans all over Chicago were encountering as they tried to move into white neighborhoods.
After the war, when the ghetto was bursting at the seams and people trying to move out, every first Negro, they said, to move in a block was going to catch hell. A mob would be out there to greet you. I've seen it, covered it.
There were no mobs in Oak Park, but the arson was a clear warning that some in the community would stop at nothing to keep the Julians out.
The arson attempt did not succeed in intimidating my mom and dad, nor could it have. They were simply not intimidatable.
Once the violence began, Anna and I felt we had no choice but to stay. To leave would have been cowardly and wrong. The right of a people to live where they want to, without fear, is more important than my science. And I was ready to give up my science and my life to bring a halt to this senseless terrorism.
The Julians moved in, and when a few months passed with no further trouble, Percy and Anna felt confident enough to go out of town, leaving the children with a babysitter.
The first my parents saw of it was when they saw it in the paper the next day with me pointing to the hole in the ground.
Hey, but Daddy, I hear that there's...
I'll never forget the morning that my daughter, Sandra, said, Daddy, they bombed my friend Percy Julian's house last night. And then she said, Daddy, why did they do that? Why would they bomb their house?
And some fire came out of it and got on fire.
I put on a record because I didn't have the answer.
My dad was angry when he came home. I mean, really angry. And clearly ready to fight. He looked at this as an attempt to murder his kids. For him, there was nothing redeemable about them at all. I'm taking this in like there's no tomorrow. And actually, you know, everything has a good side. The good side was, as a kid, I got to spend more time with my dad and got to stay up late because we'd sit in the tree outside. He'd sit there with a shotgun and we'd talk about why someone would want to do this and how wrong it was and how stupid it was.
The Julians would continue to receive threatening letters for years after. No one was ever arrested. Many Oak Park residents were horrified at the violence against the family.
I think people were shocked that anyone should be treated that way, and there were people who came forward to say there are a lot of us that don't feel that way.
There was at least 200 or more people that marched right up in front of the Julian house on East Avenue and said, "He stays, he stays."